Berlin was filled with the Christmas spirit, the streets adorned with sparkling lights and decorations, radiating an atmosphere of warmth and joy. Even with the cool evening breeze, people hurried by, carrying shopping bags and gifts, their laughter and conversations echoing through the sidewalks. For many, it was a time of happiness and celebration, but not everyone felt the same warmth in their hearts. Klara, a girl of only 10 years old, watched the people with wide eyes full of distant dreams. She stood on a busy corner, her bare feet feeling the cold of the concrete as she tried to warm herself with a thin coat that had seen better days. Her hair was matted, and her face, marked by dirt and exhaustion, reflected the harshness of life on the streets. While the world around her celebrated, Klara felt invisible. Every smile, every family gathered together, every child passing by with their parents holding gifts, made her heart ache. She dreamed of a life where she had a home, a warm bed to sleep in, and perhaps even a family who loved her. But for Klara, these dreams seemed as distant as the stars beginning to appear in the Berlin sky. And so on that cold Christmas night, Klara remained on the fringes of society, watching the happiness of others and trying to find a glimmer of hope in her lonely heart. Klara's mornings began before the sun rose. The biting cold of Berlin seemed to seep into her bones as she curled up in a narrow alley, trying to draw a little warmth from the crumpled newspaper she used as a blanket. Each day was a new struggle for survival, a silent battle Klara fought alone against a city that seemed indifferent to her pain. She wandered through the streets, gazing at the shop windows, filled with Christmas decorations, wishing she could feel the warmth of a family, even if just for a moment. But her growling stomach reminded her that her wishes were luxuries she couldn't afford. Klara needed food, a roof over her head, something to keep her alive for another day. The city's bakeries were a frequent destination, and that morning, her steps led her to one that emitted the sweet scent of freshly baked bread. Her body, weakened by hunger, was drawn to the promise of a piece of bread that could at least stave off the hunger tormenting her for a few hours. With her eyes fixed on the shop window, Klara imagined tasting one of those delicacies, forgetting her reality for a brief moment. But the dream was abruptly interrupted. The baker, a man with a stern look and a gruff voice, noticed her presence. "Get out of here! I have nothing for you," he shouted, walking toward her with a dish towel in his hand, as if Klara were a threat to his thriving morning business. She flinched, quickly stepping back, almost tripping over her own feet. The hopeful, hungry look in her eyes from moments before turned to fear and frustration. Klara didn't respond. She simply turned and ran. She ran until her legs couldn't carry her anymore, until she was far away from the smell of bread and the cruel reality that she would have to spend another day without food. Leaning against a wall, breathless, she felt the tears burning in her eyes. There was no place for her in this world. The cold, the hunger, and the loneliness were all she knew. And so little Klara, a child who should have been dreaming of gifts and Christmas celebrations, continued her bitter journey, fighting to survive in a city that had no room for her suffering. The hunger continued to gnaw at Klara's stomach, and the feeling of despair grew more intense with every step she took through the streets. Her body had no strength left to go on, but something inside her drove her forward. Hope, fragile as it was, remained her only companion. As night fell, Klara found herself in front of a grand house with high walls and imposing gates. The facade, illuminated by Christmas lights, seemed to shine brighter than anything else around her. The residents of this house undoubtedly lived in a completely different world than hers, a world where daily worries didn't include hunger or cold. She approached, looking around to make sure no one was watching. Carefully, Klara rummaged through the trash near the gate. Her thin, nimble fingers moved quickly through the bags until she found something. A piece of bread, half a sandwich, discarded but still wrapped in a napkin. Without hesitation, she devoured the food, feeling a momentary relief as her stomach settled. But then something else caught her attention. In one of the bags, among crumpled papers and food scraps, Klara saw a metallic glint. Her eyes widened as she realized it was a wallet. Her heart began to beat faster. With trembling hands, she pulled out the wallet and opened it, finding some bills and a photo. The photo showed a smiling couple holding a baby in their arms. Klara froze as she looked at the picture. Something about the baby seemed familiar. painfully familiar. The baby in the photo had features she recognized. The same eyes, the same shy smile. It was as if she were looking at a much younger version of herself. For a moment, Klara forgot the hunger, the cold, and even the loneliness. She couldn't stop staring at the photo. A storm of questions began to form in her mind. Who were these people? Why did this baby look like her? Could it be? Could this be her family? The possibility that this photo might be a clue to her true identity filled Klara with new energy. What had been just another ordinary day of survival on the streets suddenly turned into a mystery that could change everything. And in that moment, a spark of hope ignited within her. For the first time, Klara felt that there might be more to her life than the misery of the streets. Something worth exploring. With the photo clutched tightly in her dirty hands, Klara made a decision. She would find out who these people were, and perhaps she would finally find the answers that had haunted her for so long. Klara couldn't get the photo out of her head. Every time she closed her eyes, the face of the baby in the picture haunted her. Could it be possible that this child was her? Could it be possible that this photo represented a life that had been stolen from her? Doubt gnawed at her, but it also fueled her determination. She knew she had to find out the truth. With the wallet in hand, Klara decided that her first stop would be the address she found on one of the cards inside the wallet. It was a company named Mendes and Company. Klara had no idea what to expect, but she knew she couldn't ignore this possible connection to her past. After asking for directions, she found her way through the streets to the imposing building where the company was located. The building, with its mirrored windows, seemed so far removed from Klara's world that she hesitated for a moment. What if she was wrong? What if it was all just a misunderstanding? But the photo in her hand drove her forward. She entered the lobby, greeted by the air conditioning that contrasted sharply with the heat outside. The people passing by seemed to be in a hurry, all with important destinations in mind. Klara felt out of place, like a wrong piece in a luxurious puzzle. Still, she walked up to the reception desk. I need to speak with Mr. Edward Mendes, she said, her voice slightly trembling. The receptionist, a well-dressed woman, looked her up and down with a skeptical expression. Do you have an appointment? The woman asked, raising an eyebrow. Klara hesitated. How could she explain her presence there? She didn't know how to deal with people like this, but the urgency in her heart was greater than her fear. No, but it's very important. Please tell him I need to talk to him about something he lost. The receptionist seemed to consider Klara's words, but before she could respond, she was interrupted by a firm male voice. Who needs to speak with me? Edward Mendes, a tall man with an imposing presence, appeared at the entrance of the hallway. He looked directly at Klara, his eyes narrowing as he saw the girl. What do you have to say to me, girl? He asked. Klara felt a lump in her throat. She held the wallet tightly, as if it gave her courage. I found this, and there's a photo inside. I think it might be important. Edward took a few steps forward, curious yet cautious. He took the wallet from Klara's hand, and as he opened it, his expression changed drastically. His eyes fixed on the photo, and for a moment he seemed to be somewhere else, lost in memories Klara couldn't understand. Where did you get this? Edward asked, his voice now filled with suppressed emotions. I found it in the trash near a big house. I don't know who these people are, but this baby looks like me, Klara replied, her voice almost a whisper, afraid of the answer. Edward looked at Klara, his eyes now filled with something she couldn't define. Sadness, hope, or perhaps both. He took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. Come with me, he said finally, gesturing for her to follow him. She didn't know what to expect. But in that moment, one thing was clear. Klara was closer to discovering the truth about her past than ever before. And with every step she took behind Edward, she felt that her life was about to change forever. Edward led Klara to a private room within the company, away from the curious eyes of the employees. As he closed the door behind them, he seemed like a man torn between hope and fear. The photo was still in his hands, and he stared at it as if holding a puzzle piece he wasn't sure he wanted or could put together. Tell me, girl, Edward began, his voice filled with emotion. Where exactly did you find this wallet, and why do you think the baby in the photo could be you? Klara felt the urgency in Edward's voice, and tried to explain as best she could. I was looking for food in the trash near a big house. I found the wallet there, with the money and the photo inside. When I saw the photo, something told me that this child could be me. I don't know why, but I feel like I need to find out. Edward took a deep breath, trying to process what he had just heard. He approached Klara, his gaze now softer, almost paternal. Klara, the baby in this photo is my daughter Lara. She was taken from us years ago, kidnapped. We tried everything to find her, but we never had any success. Edward's words echoed in Clara's mind, unleashing a storm of emotions. She looked at him, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what was being said. You think I could be your daughter? But how is that possible? Edward knelt before Klara, gently holding her shoulders. I don't know, Klara, but this photo, the resemblance, I can't ignore the possibility. And if you really are my daughter, if you are our Lara. Before he could continue, Edward felt an overwhelming wave of hope fill his heart. Without another word, he stood up and quickly headed for the door. We need to go home. Now I need you to meet my wife, Helena. She needs to see you. Klara, still dazed by the revelation, followed Edward in silence. The drive to the Mendes home was made in a luxurious car, but Klara barely noticed the comfort around her. Her mind was spinning, trying to process everything that was happening. Could it be possible that she, a girl who had never had anything, was the missing daughter of such a wealthy and loving family? When they arrived at the Mendes villa, Klara was greeted by a house that seemed like it was out of a dream. Everything was grand and elegant, but what struck her most was the atmosphere of sadness that seemed to linger in the air, a reflection of years of silent grief. Helena Mendes, a delicate-looking woman with eyes marked by the pain of the past, appeared at the top of the stairs as she heard the door open. Her eyes met Clara's, and she froze for a moment. The photo Edward still held in his hand was the first thing she saw. As she looked at Klara, her eyes filled with tears. Edward, who is this girl? Helena asked, though deep down she already knew the answer. Helena, it could be our Lara, Edward replied, his voice breaking at the end of the sentence. Helena rushed down the stairs, approaching Klara with a mix of fear and hope. My darling, could it be? Are you our Lara? Klara didn't know what to say. She just looked at Helena, feeling the tears streaming down her face. She had never had a mother, never known what it meant to be loved by a family. But something inside her told her that maybe, just maybe, she could now find that lost love. Helena, unable to contain herself, hugged Klara tightly, as if holding the daughter she had lost for so long. If it's true, if you really are our daughter, we will never let you go again, my darling, she whispered. The moment was overwhelming. Edward stepped closer, joining the embrace, and felt the pain and hope mingling in his heart. In that moment, there was only one certainty. They would do everything to uncover the truth. The atmosphere in the Mendes home was tense, almost palpable, as Klara sat on the sofa, still trying to process everything that had happened. Edward and Helena began to relive the painful memories they had buried for so long. What seemed like a miraculous reunion also brought the trauma and pain of the past to the surface. Helena, still with tears in her eyes, sat beside Klara and held her hand. My dear, you have no idea how much we searched for you. All those years we never gave up hope. But what happened that day, when you were taken, is still a nightmare that haunts us. Klara looked at Helena, seeing the pain in her eyes, but also a strength only a desperate mother could have. What happened to me? Why was I taken? She asked, her voice filled with fear. Edward, with a serious expression, began to tell the story they had kept silent for so long. It was 12 years ago, on a day that should have been one of the happiest in our lives. We were on our way home from a birthday party. You were so happy, Lara, but everything changed in an instant. He paused for a moment, the pain evident in his eyes. Helena continued, her voice trembling. We stopped at a red light when two armed men approached the car. They demanded money, jewelry, and just when we thought that was all, one of them opened the back door and pulled you out of your seat. It all happened so fast. They took you before we could do anything. We tried to fight, but they were armed, and we were powerless. Klara listened with a heavy heart. As familiar as this story sounded, she still felt as if she were hearing about someone else's life. And then, you never saw me again? Helena shook her head, her tears flowing freely. We searched tirelessly for you. We hired detectives, put up posters, went on television, but no one ever found you. It was as if you had vanished into thin air. The pain of losing you destroyed us, but we never gave up. We always believed that one day you would return to us. Edward, trying to maintain his composure, added, there were many moments when we thought we had found you. False alarms, leads that went nowhere. But deep down, we knew that one day you would come home. And now, seeing you here, it all makes sense. But there are still questions, Klara. We need to know what happened to you all these years. Klara, feeling the weight of their expectations, tried to search her memory, but everything was blurry. She only remembered fragments, vague moments of a lost childhood, cold streets and lonely nights. I don't remember everything, she said, the frustration evident in her voice. Only that I was always alone, always trying to survive. I don't know who took me or why. I only know that I've always felt lost. Helena hugged her again, trying to offer some comfort. We'll find out, my dear. We'll piece everything together. But the most important thing now is that you're here. We'll get through this together. Edward took a deep breath and made a suggestion. We need to do a DNA test, Klara, to be sure to have the proof we need. And if the results confirm what we feel, then we can finally call you our daughter again. Klara nodded, feeling that the truth was closer than ever. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. This family was ready to fight for her, and that was something she had never experienced before. As Helena stroked Clara's hair and Edward prepared to arrange the tests, the Mendes home, which had been shrouded in grief for so long, began to fill with new hope. The path to the truth would be difficult and painful, but they were ready to walk it together. The day of the DNA test came with a mix of anticipation and fear. Edward and Helena took Klara to a private lab where everything had been prepared discreetly to avoid unwanted attention. Klara was nervous, her thoughts a whirlwind of hope and uncertainty. She wanted to believe that she was truly Lara Mendes, but what if the results showed something else? Helena held Clara's hand tightly, giving her strength. No matter what happens, darling, you'll never be alone again, she whispered. Edward, trying to maintain his composure, filled out the paperwork and spoke with the doctors. The procedure was quick. They took blood samples from Klara and Helena, and all that was left was to wait. The anxiety in the following days was almost unbearable. Klara could barely sleep, constantly imagining what her life would be like if she really was Lara. She would have a family, a home, something she had never dared to dream of. Finally, the day came. Edward received the call from the lab and, without wasting any time, called Helena and Klara into the living room. His eyes were filled with emotion, and his voice faltered as he tried to speak. The results are in. Helena, holding her breath, took the envelope and opened it with trembling hands. She looked at Edward for a moment before reading the words that would change their lives forever. Klara, the test confirms it. You are our daughter. You are Lara. In an instant, Klara was pulled into a desperate embrace by both parents. Tears flowed freely as Helena and Edward whispered words of love and relief. Klara, still in shock, clung to them, feeling for the first time the warmth of a home, the love of a family. You're home, Lara, Edward said, his voice choked with emotion. Nothing in the world will ever separate us again. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Klara, now Lara Mendes. Adjusting to her new life was both a blessing and a challenge. She had her own room, new clothes, an abundance of food, but most importantly, she had a family who loved her unconditionally. Helena and Edward did everything to make the transition easier. They bought books, movies, and even hired a tutor to help her catch up on the lost years of schooling. Lara felt loved and protected, but there were also moments when everything felt unreal, as if she would wake up and find it was all a dream. Over the months, Lara began to reconnect with her roots. Helena showed her photo albums, telling stories of her childhood, how she had always been a curious and energetic child. Gradually, these memories began to awaken something in her. Fragments of lost memories started to resurface. Inspired by her own experiences on the streets, Lara proposed the creation of a foundation to help street children, an idea that deeply touched her parents' hearts. Thus, Lara's Home was born, an organization dedicated to providing shelter, education, and care for children who, like Lara, had been forgotten by the world. That year's Christmas celebration was a special event in the Mendes household. For the first time in over a decade, the family was complete. The house, which had always been quiet and sad during the holidays, was now full of life. Lara helped decorate the Christmas tree, laughing and singing festive songs with her parents. The Christmas night was marked by a grand celebration at Lara's home, where they welcomed many children and families in need. The joy and gratitude on the children's faces were the best gifts Lara could have wished for. During dinner, Edward stood up to make a speech, his voice filled with emotion. This year, our family was blessed with the return of our daughter Lara. This is the greatest gift we could have received. But today, we're not just celebrating our joy. We're celebrating hope, unity, and the mission to help others. May we all continue to spread this light, not just at Christmas, but throughout the year. Lara, overwhelmed by a sense of gratitude and love, also stood up to speak. I spent many years of my life without hope, without a home. But today I'm here, surrounded by love. And I want each of you to know that Lara's home is a place where you'll always be welcome, where there's always room for you. Never give up hope, because it can appear when we least expect it. The days after Christmas were a time of reflection for Lara. She looked to the future with a heart full of gratitude and determination. She thought about everything she had been through, all the hardships she had faced, and how, against all odds, she had found her way back to her family. Lara knew there was still much to learn, many memories to recover, but she was ready to face the future with confidence. Her experience on the streets, her struggle for survival, had made her stronger, and now she wanted to use that strength to change the lives of others. The Mendes family, now complete, was more united than ever. Edward and Helena, despite the scars of the past, had found a new purpose, a new mission. Together, they prepared to face any challenge that might come their way, knowing that with love and unity, they could overcome anything. As the new year approached, Lara made a promise with her family that they would never lose each other again, that they would always stay together, no matter what. And so, on New Year's Eve, under a sky lit by fireworks, the Mendes family toasted to the future, ready for any challenge, with hearts full of hope and the certainty that they were finally home.